I watched my daughter-in-law's face drain of color as the judge read the verdict. Her perfectly manicured hands gripped the defendant's table, knuckles white. The same hands that had held mine while lying to my face. She tried to steal my home right out from under me, the house where I'd raised my son, where I'd said goodbye to my husband. She thought I was just another foolish old woman who'd sign anything put in front of her. She was wrong. My name is Eleanor Walsh, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived in my home in Scottsdale, Arizona for 43 years. My late husband, Thomas, and I bought it in 1982, back when this neighborhood was just dirt roads and dreams. We raised our son Michael there. We planted every tree in that yard. We painted every wall, refinished every floor. That house isn't just property to me. It's every memory of my life with the man I loved. But this story isn't about nostalgia. It's about how my son's wife, Vanessa, almost took everything from me, and how I made sure she regretted every calculated move she made. It started 6 months after Thomas passed away. I was still deep in grief, moving through my days in a fog. People tell you it gets easier, but they don't tell you about the mornings when you wake up and forget he's gone, reaching across the bed to find it empty. They don't tell you about making coffee for two out of habit, then staring at the extra cup on the counter. They don't tell you about the silence, the crushing, suffocating silence of a house that used to be full of life. I'd stopped going to my book club. I'd stopped tending the garden Thomas and I had nurtured for decades. Some days I didn't bother getting dressed. What was the point? Who was there to see me? Who cared? Michael had been coming by regularly, which I appreciated. He'd bring takeout because he knew I wasn't cooking for myself. He'd check the mail, take out the trash, all the little things Thomas used to do. My son was trying, and I loved him for it. But then Vanessa started joining him. At first, I thought she was being supportive. She'd bring casseroles, help with groceries, sit with me while I sorted through Thomas's belongings. She was patient when I cried. She held my hand when I couldn't bring myself to donate his clothes. "Mom, you don't have to do this alone," she'd say, her hand on my shoulder, her voice soft and caring. "We're family." I was grateful, or at least I thought I was. Looking back now, I can see I was just lonely and vulnerable. And she knew exactly how to exploit that. She was studying me, learning my weaknesses, finding the cracks in my armor. Vanessa is 38, 15 years younger than my son. She's beautiful in that carefully constructed way, all highlighted hair and designer workout clothes. She works in real estate, which should have been my first warning sign. She knows how to read people, how to find their weaknesses and pressure points. About 3 months after Thomas passed away, the helpful suggestions started. "Eleanor, this house is so big for just you," she'd say, walking through my living room with her real estate agent's eye, touching the walls, examining the crown molding like she was already appraising it. "4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. Don't you feel lost in all this space? And maintaining it. The repairs, the yard work, the property taxes that keep going up in this neighborhood. It must keep you up at night." "I manage just fine," I'd reply. "But should you have to manage at all? At your age, you deserve to relax. Let someone else worry about leaky faucets and roof repairs." She'd pause, then add quietly, almost like she didn't want to say it, "And Eleanor, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you really comfortable financially with just your pension and Social Security? Thomas was the one who handled the money, wasn't he?" The truth was, I could afford them. Thomas was a prudent man. We had savings, investments, and his life insurance. I wasn't wealthy, but I was comfortable. I wasn't about to discuss my finances with Vanessa, though. I'm fine, I'd say firmly. But she wouldn't let it go. Every visit became another campaign to convince me to sell. You could move into a nice senior community, she'd say. Make friends your own age, have activities planned for you. Wouldn't that be easier than rattling around in this big empty house? Michael would shift uncomfortably during these conversations, but he never told her to stop. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. My son, the boy I'd raised to stand up for what's right, who'd once punched a kid in middle school for bullying someone smaller, who'd cried when he accidentally stepped on a bird's nest, was now just sitting there while his wife tried to push me out of my own home. When had he become someone who chose the path of least resistance over protecting his own mother?
I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him. I wanted to ask him when he'd stop being the man his father and I raised him to be. But I didn't, because I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid that maybe he'd been agreeing with Vanessa all along. Maybe he wanted my house too. Maybe I didn't really know my own son anymore. Then came the concerned visits about my memory. Mom seemed confused when I called her yesterday, Vanessa told Michael one day when they thought I was in the kitchen. I was actually in the hallway and I heard every word. She couldn't remember what day it was, and last week she forgot she'd already told me that story about the garden club. She's grieving, Michael said. Give her time. I'm just worried about her living alone, Vanessa replied. What if something happens? What if she falls and can't call for help? What if she forgets to turn off the stove? I was furious. I've forgotten what day it was once because all my days felt the same after losing Thomas. And yes, maybe I'd repeated a story, but that's not dementia. That's being human. She was building a narrative that I was losing my mental capacity, and I knew why. 2 months later, Vanessa showed up at my door alone on a Tuesday afternoon. She was dressed professionally, carrying her designer bag and a leather portfolio. Eleanor, I'm so glad you're home. She breezed past me into my living room. I have something exciting to show you. She spread papers across my coffee table with practiced efficiency. Michael and I have been talking, and we want to make sure you're taken care of, she began. So, we've set up a trust. It's a way to protect your assets and make sure everything is properly managed. My stomach tightened. I didn't ask for a trust. I know, but think of it as our gift to you. Estate planning is complicated, and at your age, it's important to have everything in order. This way, if anything happens to you, everything transfers smoothly. No probate, no legal headaches for Michael. It's what Thomas would have wanted. She said his name so casually, like she had any right to invoke my husband's wishes. This document here, she pointed to a dense legal document, establishes the trust, and this one transfers your house into the trust for protection. It's all standard stuff. Just sign here, here, and here. She held out an expensive pen, smiling, that practiced real estate agent smile. Something felt wrong, very wrong, but I couldn't articulate what it was. The papers looked official, full of legal language I didn't fully understand, and she was family. She was my son's wife. Why would she harm me? I'd like my lawyer to look at this first, I said. Her smile tightened just slightly. Of course, if you want to waste money on legal fees for something totally standard. But Eleanor, I do this for a living. I wouldn't steer you wrong. And honestly, lawyers just complicate simple things. They'll charge you thousands of dollars to tell you exactly what I'm telling you now. Still, I'd feel more comfortable. Mom's getting so paranoid lately, she said, and I realized she was talking to someone on her phone. When had she called Michael? Yes, I'm here now trying to help her with the trust paperwork we discussed, and she's refusing to sign. She says she wants to pay a lawyer to review it first. I know, honey. I'm trying. Maybe you should talk to her. She handed me her phone. Michael was on the line. Mom, what's going on? He asked. Vanessa's trying to help you. I just want my own lawyer to review it, I said. Why? Vanessa does this professionally. Do you not trust her? Do you not trust me? That question hit me like a slap. My own son asking if I trusted him? Of course I trust you, I said quietly. But even as I said it, a small voice in my head whispered that something wasn't right. Then, just sign the papers, Mom. I'm trying to help you. We're trying to help you. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Do you want us to just walk away? Leave you to struggle alone? That question felt like emotional blackmail, but I was too tired to fight it. Too tired, too sad, too lonely to keep questioning whether my own son and his wife had my best interests at heart. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'll sign. Vanessa's smile returned, bright and triumphant. She was already pulling the documents back towards us, uncapping that expensive pen. But as I reached for it, something inside me rebelled. Thomas's voice seemed to echo in my head as clear as if he were standing beside me. He always said, Eleanor, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut. We didn't survive this long by ignoring our instincts. My hand hovered over the paper. I just need to use the restroom first, I said, standing up abruptly, my heart pounding. I could see a flash of annoyance across Vanessa's face before she smoothed it away. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. I could hear Vanessa in the living room, probably texting Michael, probably complaining about how difficult I was being. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old and tired, the lines around my eyes deeper than they'd been before Thomas died. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't senile, and I didn't have to sign anything I wasn't comfortable with. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. I had to be quick. I had to be smart about this. If Vanessa realized what I was doing, she'd leave with those documents and I'd never see them again. I cracked the bathroom door open just enough to angle my phone toward the coffee table. Click the first page. Click the second. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. Click, click, click. I photographed every single page, zooming in on the fine print, on the signature lines, on everything. When I was done, I took a moment to breathe. I looked at the photos on my phone, making sure they were clear enough to read. They were. Whatever these documents actually said, I now had proof of what Vanessa had shown me. I flushed the toilet for authenticity, ran the water, and took one more look in the mirror. I could do this. I could sign these papers, smile, play the role of the grateful, compliant old woman she expected me to be, and then I would find out the truth. When she came back out, I had made my decision. I'm going to sign, I told Vanessa, but I want copies of everything first for my records. Of course, she said smoothly. I'll email you PDFs tonight. That was her mistake. She was so confident, so sure I'd just be grateful and compliant. She probably would have sent me the real documents later after everything was filed. I signed the papers. I watched her witness my signature, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She gathered everything up quickly, efficiently, like she was worried I might change my mind. Thank you for trusting us, Eleanor, she said at the door. You've made the right choice. This protects everyone. After she left, I sat in my living room for a long time, looking at the photos on my phone. Something was very, very wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The next morning, I called Harold Chen, the attorney who'd handled Thomas's estate. Harold had been our lawyer for 20 years. He was semi-retired now, but he still took my call immediately. Eleanor, how are you holding up? He asked kindly. Harold, I need you to look at something. I'm afraid I may have made a terrible mistake. I drove to his office and showed him the photos on my phone. I watched his expression change as he scrolled through the images, zooming in on the legal language. Eleanor, he said slowly, his voice tight, did you sign these? Yes, yesterday. Vanessa said it was a trust for protection. This isn't a trust document. He sat down the phone and looked at me with a mixture of anger and concern. This is a deed transfer. According to this paperwork, you've signed your house over to Michael and Vanessa Walsh completely. Full ownership transfer. The room seemed to tilt. My vision blurred. What? He created a trust. She tricked you into signing a deed that transfers your home directly to them. Once this is recorded with the county, legally speaking, they own your house. You would have no ownership interest whatsoever. Not 1 square foot of the home you've lived in for 43 years. My stomach felt like something was crushing it. I couldn't breathe. But she said it was for protection. This protects them, not you, Eleanor. Once this is recorded, they could evict you from your own home. They could sell it out from under you and keep every penny. You would have no legal recourse because you signed this voluntarily. In the eyes of the law, you gave it away. The words felt like daggers. Gave it away. My home. Everything Thomas and I built together. Every memory. Every wall we painted. Every flower we planted. I felt nauseous. Can we stop it? I asked desperately. She hasn't filed it yet, has she? Harold pulled up the county recorder's website. Let me check. No, nothing's been recorded yet. That's good. That gives us time, but Eleanor, she'll file this probably within the next few days. We need to act fast. What can I do? Harold leaned back in his chair, thinking. Then a slow smile spread across his face. We're going to beat her at her own game. Over the next 2 days, Harold and I worked quickly and quietly. Here's what we did.
Did you advise her to seek independent legal counsel before signing? More silence. Did you, in fact, actively discourage her from seeking legal counsel? Vanessa's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client doesn't have to answer." "She doesn't," the judge agreed. "The evidence speaks for itself." She removed her glasses and looked directly at Vanessa with an expression that could have frozen fire. "Mrs. Vanessa Walsh, you used your professional knowledge of real estate law to deliberately mislead a vulnerable, elderly woman into signing away her home. You exploited her grief, her trust in family, and her lack of legal expertise. You then attempted to evict her from the property she's lived in for over 4 decades. This court finds that the deed you recorded was obtained through fraud, misrepresentation, and elder abuse. It is hereby declared null and void." Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees went weak. Harold steadied me with a hand on my arm. "Furthermore," Judge Morrison continued, "I am referring this matter to the county prosecutor for criminal investigation. What you did wasn't just unethical, Mrs. Walsh. It was illegal. Bailiff, please ensure the prosecutor's office receives a full copy of this case file." Vanessa's face went white. "The legitimate trust deed recorded by Eleanor Walsh stands as the valid deed of record. The eviction notice is quashed. Mrs. Walsh will retain full control of her property. This hearing is concluded." The gavel came down. I looked across the courtroom at Vanessa. She was staring at me with pure hatred, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Michael caught my arm as we left the courtroom. "Mom," he said, "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have questioned what Vanessa was doing." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised who'd chosen his wife over his mother when it mattered. "You're right," I said. "You should have." "Can you forgive me?" That was the question, wasn't it? Could I forgive him for standing by while his wife tried to destroy me? "Eventually," I said. "But not today. Today I need some distance." His face crumpled, but he nodded. The prosecutor did pursue charges against Vanessa. She was charged with attempted fraud, forgery, and filing false documents. She ended up taking a plea deal, receiving 2 years probation, a hefty fine, and her real estate license was permanently revoked. Michael filed for divorce 6 weeks after the hearing. Apparently, once he couldn't deny what Vanessa had done, he couldn't stay married to her. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was just sad that it had come to this. My son and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly. He comes by once a week for dinner. We don't talk about Vanessa unless necessary. He's in therapy working through how he allowed himself to be manipulated, how he failed to protect me. I told him I'm proud of him for doing that work. As for me, I'm still in my home, the home Thomas and I built together. The garden is blooming, the house is full of memories, and every morning I wake up in my own bed, in my own room, exactly where I belong. I learned something through all of this. Being older doesn't make you stupid or helpless. Being grieving doesn't make you an easy target. And trusting your instincts, even when everyone tells you you're wrong, can save you from disaster. I also learned that family doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. But mostly I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. At 72 years old, I stood up for myself, outsmarted someone half my age, and won. And that's a lesson worth remembering.